More and more information is being made available to us to understand stress in the modern world. But back in 1967, a famous Hungarian endocrinologist by the name of Selye published his research on stress. He came up with 4 classifications of stress, and they are still highly regarded today. In fact, he's regarded as one of the pioneers in stress research. Quickly, these are the 4 classifications that he came up with. So the first one is eustress. Eustress is the good stress that we experience when we need to rise to a challenge. So we'll experience this when we are in sport or when we're exercising and we're pushing our body. But of course, too much of this stress can actually damage our body and damage our health. The other one is overstress. So this is pushing yourself beyond the limits. Now, this is okay when you need to do things like go for a job interview or speak on stage, but where it doesn't work for us is when we're working late every night or we're working 7 days a week. We're pushing ourselves beyond our limits all the time. And the third one that's really well known is distress. It's well known because it's fight or flight. We've all heard of this term. So we either need to fight a predator or run from a predator. But of course, we don't have predators that often in our lives. And so we experience the fight or flight response in everyday living and overproducing the stress hormone cortisol in our system. The fourth one is really unknown. Most people don't know this one. It's called understress. Now, more and more research is being done around understress within big companies and organizations because they're recognizing that it leads to a lack of productivity and it leads to a lack of innovation and development. Understress is basically presenteeism. It's where you're rocking up to work, but you're not actively involved, you're not engaged, you're not being utilized, and you've lost your mojo. You've completely lost out. So some of you may be familiar with that. I want to share my personal story with you of when I experienced understress. I was working for a charitable organisation and I had a role where I was doing business development. So I would go out and engage with the local community and small businesses to generate sponsorship and donations and engage with them to have a relationship with the charity. So it involved a lot of networking, talking, presenting, and I was quite often on the phone. However, I had a new supervisor, and this supervisor really didn't understand my role, my skill sets, wasn't interested in my ideas, and didn't recognize what I could contribute to the team. We'd recently moved to a new head office, and it was a disaster. The layout was terrible. It was a big open space divided by partitions and a mutual corridor. So there was a lot of executive staff and senior management staff who really needed to concentrate, and then there was all the other staff that needed to do lots of conversation and talking and working collaboratively on the phone and with the team. At this particular time, I was selling my house. So not only was I talking on the phone a lot for my work, I was also having to have the odd phone call to talk to my real estate agent and the bank about purchasing my house. And so there was a lot of talking for me on the phone. Now, this new supervisor sent me an email, and it started with, "Don't take offense, but," and so you know when a conversation or an email starts like that it's about to be offensive. She said, "I can't be bothered to walk down to say this to you in person, but would you mind keeping your voice down? I'm trying to concentrate on writing a report. Thanks." Now, within seconds of me receiving this email, she was at the printer, which was right next to my desk, smiled at me, picked up the paper, and walked back to her desk. So I knew at that moment the printer had more priority over me. And not only did she not want to engage in personal conversation, she would deliberately exclude me from social engagements with the rest of the team outside of work. At the time, I had kids, and she said, "Oh, I didn't think you'd want to come because you have kids." And the rest of the team were young people that didn't have any children. They later did have children, but at that time, I was the only parent. I now know that this deliberate exclusion is a form of bullying. So if you're experiencing that, you need to understand the bullying legislation. But for me, this caused immense understress. I was being undervalued, underutilized, underrecognized. I hated going to work. Every day that I woke, I dreaded going into work, and I'd have to work really hard to keep myself engaged, to find work to do, and to be valuable while I was being paid an income, because certainly my supervisor did not appreciate or value me at all. I was experiencing a high level of understress. So perhaps you're experiencing this at work. Perhaps you're feeling underutilized, undervalued. You feel like no one is hearing you, no one is listening to you. This is a form of stress. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Please comment below.